Thanks for coming. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight Barry's second writer-in-residence, June Spence. Miss Spence comes to Barry from Bowling Green, Ohio, where she earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in creative writing and served for a year after that as a visiting writer. A native of Raleigh, North Carolina, Miss Spence was attracted to Barry by the beauty of the campus and its southern location. In an interview with Dawn Tolbert in our PR office, June said, quote, "I knew this was the right thing to do when I came down to interview. When I got to Georgia, everybody talked like me, even more so. It just felt right." June comes to us with highest recommendations from noted Southern writers Jill McCorkle and Doris Betts, both of whom described her as a young writer of great talent and promise. As Doris Betts put it, June is, quote, "a comer in the best sense of that word, a young and talented writer who knows what she wants and is bound to grow and develop," end quote. As Jill McCorkle put it, quote, "Barry would be well served by hiring such a talented young writer whose career is taking off so quickly." June's career is indeed taking off. Her stories have appeared in such notable publications as Oxford American, the Southern Review, Puerto del Sol, and, most prestigiously, Best American Short Stories 1997. Last year saw the publication of her first book, Missing Women and Others. Reviewers have praised Miss Spence's use of language, her mastery of form, and her empathetic but uncompromising sensibility. Southern writer Kate Gibbons described her stories as, quote, "both gentle and firm, quiet and packed with glorious candor," end quote. Larry Brown, praising June's, quote, "beautiful sentences," says that she writes about her characters with knowledge and intelligence, with wit and insight, and a generous helping of compassion. June's talents and energy are benefiting our students and our community in numerous ways. She's teaching creative writing classes, judging the fiction submissions for the Emerging Writers Contest of the Southern Women Writers Conference, and appearing as a featured speaker at the conference next spring. She will also contribute to the life of our community through such events as tonight's reading, as well as some visits to local community groups. After June's reading, you're all invited to a reception in the Ford living room, where copies of June's book, Missing Women and Others, will be available for sale and signing. Also, after her reading, June will take questions, so you might want to be thinking about some questions you want to ask her after the reading. Please welcome June Spence.
Thank you, Emily. That was awesome. It's nice to hear cool stuff before you come up here. Thanks so much for having me. So far it's been I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying my classes. I was saying today was a great day in fiction because we had our first fiction workshop today, and it was awesome. It was so good, and it made me real psyched for the rest of the semester and year here. So you can't slack off now that you got off to such a good start with my students, because now I know what you're capable of. You have to go. I'm going to read, and I'm going to just kind of pay attention to time, because I know the MTV Music Awards are on tonight, and I know that's a big conflict, and we tried to schedule around it, but anyway, I will read, and I'll keep it short and sweet. And do ask questions as they arise. Well, ask them after. If you raise your hand during, it'll really throw me off. I'll start with a story called Prodigy, and it's something. How is this, by the way? Is it too echoey? It's okay? I could stand back a little bit. How's that for a sound in the back? Pretty good. I always like to read this in a college setting, especially in an auditorium, because it's like the music class that's in the story. I'm not convinced it's the best read-aloud story, so in its defense, I'll say that it's short and it's kind of weird, and if you're not real crazy, but I have better outline stuff that I'll follow up with. Okay? It's called Prodigy. What Jasper can't get over are her miniature hands, blue-veined and corded as an old woman's, the expert positioning of the fingers, now nimbly dancing, now muscles blunt against the strings. Her delicate grip on the bow, carving sound, invokes a stiff rhythmic sway in her body, precise as a metronome. Those hands, and yet her face is baby sleek and rounded, 2 spots of color dabbed high on the plump cheeks. Her tiny pursed mouth is rouged blood red. They paint her face, but dress her as a child. The high-waisted yellow dress lies smooth and flat across her chest. Crinoline peeps from her fanned skirt. Her colt-legged, spindly stance is anchored in black-buckled shoes. Gwendolyn Kim is a child, 10 years old, but small, even for 10, barely 4 feet tall, exquisitely tiny. Her violin is toy-sized. She's been playing since she was 4, touring since age 7. She's the child of Korean refugees, their miracle in America. It is a miracle, too, that Jasper has found her, that random channel flipping landed in this. God bless public TV's middle of the night eclecticism. Mild interest held him through the 6-year-old math whiz and the 11-year-old medical student until Gwendolyn Kim. Her ancient hands and soft baby body, her painted face and little girl dress thrill and confuse him. He feels her aura penetrate the sickly green rays of the television and infuse him with a pure light. What he feels, he can only call rapture. Nothing enraptures Jasper in this town. He saves money for the big move, but suspects it will never happen. His plans are too ill-conceived, too vague. He knows only that he wants to go away, to a city perhaps. But he hates traffic and noise. He hates not knowing his way around. The rent on his claustrophobic studio apartment is an unsurpassed bargain. The thrift in him could not bear to pay more. Gwendolyn Kim flies to Chicago, New York, Minneapolis, Topeka. Her tours are interior. She's whisked from plane to car to hotel, where she pockets the small tablets of soap. She's combed, fitted, and painted, then jettisoned to the dark caverns of the music halls. Jasper spends the money he saved on MUS 110, music appreciation at the university. He learns Baroque from classical. He buys a candle in the shape of a treble clef. He buys a poster that he lacks the courage to hang. It is of a pointed ballet shoe balanced on a bow, stark against the curved silhouette of a violin. Adagio, it says in gold across the bottom, slow in tempo. It is the way things move in this town, slow in tempo. One season drags reluctantly into the next. The shopping mall forms one brick at a time amid ownership disputes. It remains an unfulfilled promise of a food patio raucous with teenagers and shops that sell funky ethnic bracelets. The students don't believe. They desert the town every weekend and all summer long, and they never look back. The university is rigid, ancient limestone, grounded in its own perpetuity. Plaques on fountains speak of a grim century, a modest birth as a teacher's college and growth into a humanities stronghold. Jasper feels he conceded to something when he paid for his 3 credit hours. Perhaps it's just the new vocabulary, tuition, elective, bursar, syllabus, transcript. Jasper rides his bike to the Collins Auditorium 2 mornings a week for his music lecture, then to Rollo's, where he replenishes the salad bar and wipes down tables. Rollo's every day. From mid-afternoon on, people collect around the bar, noisy, rude, furiously drinking. They spill more liquor than they drink, and they polish off heaping platters of chicken wings and nachos. By 2:30 or 3 a.m. they ebb, leaving the surfaces gluey as flat paper. Gwendolyn Kim's days are rigid with discipline, allowing only for excellence, nothing clumsy or superfluous. She is fed on gruel, nutritious but bland. Flavors could distract. No television, a private tutor who speaks in monotone. She sleeps in her velvet-lined violin case, a brick of rosin closed in each tiny fist. Her head must be a resonant chamber, a conduit of music. A couple or 5 beers, and Jasper heads home. He tries to listen to the tapes from class, but the sounds elude him dreamily, sifting through his head and gone. He turns on Hank Williams with a baseball game. It's only Gwendolyn Kim's playing that captivates him. He eats a soggy, melted ham and cheese sandwich out of a styrofoam box. He rakes the bottom of the potato chip bag for salty crumbs. He tips back a waxy cup of soda, feels it coat his teeth with stickiness. What is talent? Jasper's mother keeps his rude crayon drawings and a plaster cast of his small hands to commemorate an average childhood. Jasper Leonard Schumacher, 10 fingers and 10 toes. His halting recitation of the ABCs, the tying of the shoelaces. Big hand on the 12, little hand on the 6. 6 o'clock is supper time. Ate all his broccoli. Didn't like tuna fish. Loved canned pears and beef jerky. Fingerprints in the margarine. Greasy mouth proclaiming innocence. Plucked at his own genitals, but the doctor said, fine, fine. The cowlicks splayed at a defiant angle, resisting wet combs and hairspray. Cursive and times tables on the dry brown paper. Strep throat and chicken pox. A broken wrist. Going with a girl, freckles and gray eyes, who plunged her tongue into his mouth 6th grade. His fingers traced the elastic of her bra, but the teacher found them in the spring-damp woods beyond the soccer fields. Drafting class, English lit, track team that ended with the cigarettes. Growth, urging and insistent, aching in his thigh bones. Bumps, red and painful. Adam's apple jutting like a beak. Best friend Phil, who lit his own farts to make a blue flame and got them sweet red wine to drink. No girls since that first one. 18 and still no girls. His head brimmed with heat and longing. The whore, his age or younger, eyes crusty with mascara, opened beneath him, and he shriveled inside her. Saw her emptying the trash when he left. The Tokyo sauna, open 24 hours, still red, winking neon beyond town. An embarrassment still. For 8 years he gums the motor past. Gwendolyn Kim coats her tongue with the soap, waggles it at her tuba. See, too sick to play tonight. When she's sick, she gets to wear her flannel pajamas and drink hot chicken broth. She is given 2 vitamin C pills and holds them sour in her mouth until they burn. The draperies are closed and the tapes are shut off so it is blissfully quiet and she can rest. But today the tutor shakes her head ruefully. Jig is up. She sees the foam edging Gwendolyn Kim's lips. Shame. Everyone is expecting you. Is lighting your own farts a talent? Is whoring? Jasper can slice a radish paper thin. He can maneuver his bike between snugly parked cars. The music class, he learns, is considered a blow-off. Nobody goes to the listening lab. The tests are true, false, and multiple choice. They are required to attend 3 musical performances, but people nab the programs for evidence and leave at intermission. The professor is hapless and kind. He ignores the frantic snores and plays an assortment of instruments. So far, the oboe, the accordion, and the bagpipes. No strings, though, no violin. Jasper doggedly attends each lecture, even after the caterwauling bagpipes caused him to clasp the sides of his head. Is doggedness a talent? In the murmuring dark, in the amniotic wings, Gwendolyn Kim waits. Her accompanist, another of the great gray pianists who change from city to city. fumbles with the buttons on his vest, claps his big meaty hand down on her shoulder before shuffling out onto the stage, only the tiny glow of the lamp over his sheet music to guide him. But Gwendolyn Kim steps out into a circle of light, violin nestled in the hook of her arm. There are restrained smatterings of applause. They are wary of her size and reserve their enthusiasm. They are curious. They are doubting. She is too wee and adorable. They expect only to be charmed. At the lip of the stage, she peers down at the shadowy audience, imagining expectant moths. Mess up, and in you go, she tells herself. They will devour you with pity. She slides a foot sideways, then forward slightly, inching her toes ahead to test the edge. She swings her violin up and fits her chin into the rest, clears her throat, expectantly the bow poised. The piano tinkles feebly behind, and she razors, wings beating furiously, the bow a zigzag, a stabbing, her forearms thrum, retract, her wrist palpitates blood to the fingers leap and press with programmed certainty. Then slowly she sears the strings, a distended moan. Jasper skips out on the jazz ensemble, number 2 of the required 3, the intermission. At the entrance, his professor leans against a pillar, smoking. Did you remember your program? He quips to Jasper, who unclasps and scrambles onto his bike. No time for irony. Rollo's, then home. I don't mind reading too much, but a lot of times it gets to be, I can go somewhere and read and then I can go away again, so I don't have to see people again. It's just a little different when you gotta stick around after. And it's always my family, when they're around and I do a reading, they're like, can I come? Can I come? I say, no. But my dad comes to some around Raleigh, where we live, and he'll come to stuff, and he's such a ham that he wants to, and he'll, under the question period, he'll be like, okay, yes, mister? And he'll say things like, you must have had the most wonderful hair. So it's hard when there's people that you know or will know in the audience. But that's okay. I'll read this one. These are bonus tracks. These aren't in the book. They're like the extras when you buy the CD. So I'll email you a copy if you get the story, if you get or something. I had these two. These are real short pieces, and I'll read one and possibly the other one. I had written them for shorts. I've been invited to write something for, we have our Sunday paper was having this little journal thing, Sunday journal, and so I had real limited space to write a story, and they wanted local authors to contribute. And I have lots and lots of really limited short stories, but this one's fun out loud, and it gave me an excuse to finish it, and finish it quickly and in a small space. And I think most of what I read from here on out is I think they're all first person. So if you're tempted to think that all first person things are autobiographical, you'll have a hard time choosing which one would be autobiographical. And the answer is none. This is called Let a Sleeping Love Lie, and that is from my good friend Mark. Plays around with writing all kinds of stuff. He'll write screenplay, and he'll try to write plays, and write poetry, and write prose, and he went through this thing last summer where he wanted to write country songs, and but he didn't ever write a country song, but he came up with a list of great titles, and this is one of the titles. And so we were doing stuff back and forth, and so he said, well, here, let this be a title to a story, and so that's what I started with. But his best title, which would be a great story, except that the title itself is the story, was if you don't stop waving that gun at me, I'm going to start waving goodbye. And that was like the best. I hope that song is written one day. Because it's the best title in the world. But this one is Let a Sleeping Love Lie. I was browsing at the Quick Stop because sometimes they'll discount their cat food down to next to nothing, and plus they're always the first ones out with the new generic smokes. I'll buy a carton of whatever's new and keep one pack sealed. It's the only collecting I do, unless you count those religious mongoloid baby figurines that people keep giving me for my birthday and Christmas. I never asked for them, and now they're cluttering up my house with their creepy, goggle-eyed stares. They've got Bible verses set in gold around their bases. I'd just as soon you give me nothing and give me another one of those. Give me a headache, give me rabies, a hard time, chiggers. But it hurts people's feelings if you tell them the truth, so I just say thank you and keep adding figurines to my shelf. If I don't dust them, their eyes go dull and don't seem to follow me around the room so much. Dull eyes or no, they were the only company I'd had all the weekend, which brought me to the Quick Stop. I'm not a hermit, but I've lived like one since Roy left me. Roy says it was you throwed him out. Well, who are you going to believe? He couldn't wait to go climb on that woman and do his business with her every night. My changing the locks was all the incentive he needed. I told him, you like it so much, you go and see if you can make a life with her. Well, they got a baby now, but the woman's let herself go. She's fat now, her roots are an inch gone to black, and she doesn't wax her lip anymore. When I see her, I say to myself, there, before the grace of God, go I. Then go I home and dust the figure. They're bad company, like all the ugly babies Roy and I could have had, setting cheap porcelain and leering at me from the shelf, gathering dust. When I start to gather dust, I go somewhere, even if it's only the Quick Stop. You can guess who I saw there. Roy had a bag of diapers under his arm and was getting a 32-ounce out of the cooler. It was in me to say, some things never changed, do you? But I didn't. I just said, hey, and he turned and said, well, hello. He grinned at me. Gotta be something good to eat. It was the grin that got me in with Roy to begin with. His teeth were good then, white and strong and even rows, a loyal man's teeth that promised solid years, wholesome food. He had a good job turning the lathe that made chair and table legs for dining room suits, and the factory gave us a whole set in varnished maple for our wedding present. We fed it to the stove the winter after he was laid off. First just the leaves because they made the table too big for our breakfast nook anyway, but the rest soon followed. We had thyme roasted marshmallows over it, cold nights huddled together over the one ends. The roads division took me on as a toll booth operator, and Roy cooked up a scheme where I would pocket half the take and hand it off to him every afternoon when he drove through, but I refused. Already the figurines were getting to me. I had most of the 10 Commandments by then, including thou shalt not steal, inscribed at the feet of a pious, pop-eyed angel, her hands open and empty, clean. What we needed was a stern, no adultery figurine to chase Roy. But apparently that is a limited edition piece, pricey and hard to locate. By the time our maple set was gone, so was Roy. I have a patio dining room set in resin now, and if I burned it, the fumes would kill me. You doing all right? You need anything? Roy just grinning like he knew. I found myself telling him that the water heater was on the blink again, thinking that if I had bought a new one instead of paying for a divorce, I'd always have a warm bath. But I'd still have a rotten husband. And sometimes a cold shower is just the wake-up call I need. He said he'd come by soon to fix it if I wanted. I almost said okay, knowing what it was I'd be agreeing to. Roy couldn't fix a flat tire, couldn't fix his way out of a paper bag. He would just bang on the thing with a wrench, drink his malt liquor, and try to get me into bed. You have no vision, he would accuse me when I nixed the toll booth scheme. But I was tormented by visions all that spring of him with some pretty blonde, younger, thinner, more willing to break command. He'd wanted children, and I'd wanted us to have some other things first, even when I quit the pill trying to keep him. It's no consolation that the woman's looks are gone and my belly flat as a teenager's. Grace of God, I tell myself, grace of God, but it doesn't take. Somebody knocked their horn and I looked outside and saw that woman parked in front of the Quick Stop, the old Pontiac I helped Roy buy before we were married. Their baby was standing in her fat lap, just craning to get a look at his daddy, whose teeth, it must be told, were not so good. Time to say, it looks like you have enough to tend to and get out of there. No cigarettes, no cat food, but my head full of self-righteousness and dignity. My mama says, let sleeping dogs lie. I say, let lying dogs be. The grinning ones are just fixing to bite me. There, by the frozen foods, I hesitate.
Yeah.
Isn't that like a country song? I'll read this one. Another first person. A different first person. It's in the form of a journal. We had a journal piece today we talked about, and that inspired me to read this journal. I don't know why it's in a journal form, except it's almost like an impossible journal. I can't imagine if I have to sit and think about somebody sitting and writing all this down. I can't quite imagine it, but that's the conceit. Anyway, it's called Sick Log. May 23rd. I woke with a vague nausea, a persistent but not unduly high fever. The timing of my brief contagion couldn't have been better, I felt, given the point we were at in our relationship, Hamilton and I. We'd been tackling the everyday errands together. We'd walked down the bright aisles of grocery stores, filling our baskets with high-fiber cereal, dandruff shampoo, and the compromising off-brands of toothpaste and toilet paper. Side by side in the laundromat, we'd sorted piles of underwear, our every red-edged pore and sharp relief beneath industrial fluorescence that revealed the shabby grays and yellows of our so-called whites. We'd culled the sale racks, taken turns at the gas pump, beaten rugs, scrubbed toilets, and broiler pans. These shared tasks quickly preempted dating. Dating wasn't keeping up with the intimacy of the commonplace. So the time was ripe, I thought. A mild illness is more real life, staring you right in the face, bleary, sniffling. I predicted Hamilton would be moved by my vulnerability, as well as my dogged perseverance. His nurturing spirit would be stirred. Hamilton awoke to my soft groans and asked, was I hungover? Which really called into question his empathic potential. I sank back into my pillow, too weary and dejected to even dignify that with an answer. He tried to make amends by palming my forehead and giving me aspirins. He asked, what else do you need? I demurred. He persisted. I gave him the spare key to my apartment so he could slip back in while I was sleeping. He brought back orange juice, broth, and vitamins. He rearranged the blankets I had kicked off, smoothed back my fever-damp hair, and whispered, get well, call me if you need anything, and left. I triple-dosed the vitamin C and rallied by mid-afternoon. May 24th. Hamilton called and asked how I was, and I said ovulating. I wanted him to develop a respectful awe of the female body. He asked, could I eat barbecue and ovulate at the same time? Hamilton thinks this passes for witty banter. I said I didn't know if I could be very good company since I was so likely to be absorbed in my own mysterious inner workings. I savored that uncertain pause that indicated he didn't know if I was kidding. I said, I'm kidding. Let him off the hook, but later I set aside my plate of fiery ribs and mashed his hand against my belly. There goes another one, I said. Fertile as the Nile. I didn't seem to want to stay over after supper. Nuzzling over in front of the television was our usual Sunday night affair. Left before 11 o'clock. May 25th. Showed up late for work. At lunch with the boss, found myself weeping openly at the salad bar. Those gherkins, forlorn as zombie toes, speckled with sodden cloves. I couldn't bear it. They made my feet itch. I thought I'd contracted leprosy. Suspected Hamilton at once of the most grave infidelities. He still volunteered at the soup kitchen long after a stint of court-ordered community service had placed him there. I had thought he stayed on from charitable feelings, but knew then he had fallen for some transient urchin dropping her digits during prayer time. It was plain as the nose on my face, also suddenly itching, scaly red. My boss sent me home. Hamilton called, but I let the answering machine field that one. Wasn't ready to confront him. Soaked in an oatmeal bath, slathered myself with Lubriderm, and wearing gloves to bed. May 26th. Soft and rosy by morning, all signs of leprosy gone, but fever returned. And with it, patchy white designs on my tongue. Geographic tongue. A map of the former Soviet Union etched inside my mouth. The frozen wastes of Siberia, land of gaunt dissidents. I went to work embracing capitalism. The boss was wary, but I showed her my open-toed sandals, red polish, stark against clean, healthy feet. She kept me behind the counter all day. Hamilton sent flowers, big, weepy hothouse variety. They made me sneeze. The card said, "Whither is my girlfriend?" I gulped in histamine tablets, arranged to meet him later. May 27th. Tongue of bland, uniform pink, but throat is raw and scratchy. Am allergic not to hothouse flowers, but to Hamilton, or possibly just his cologne, Spartacus, which I've discarded. Called in sick to work and spent the morning scrubbing all traces of the scent from his apartment, hauling clothes and bed linens to the laundry, went home and did same. The afternoon was exhausted, my throat pulpy and blooming with pus. Muscles ached, glands felt like eggs. Hamilton appeared on my doorstep at dusk, bewildered. "Why did you clean without me?" he demanded. The forbidden scent wafted from his collar, gagging me, and I swooned. "Cologne!" I rasped, my ravaged throat closing up. I thought I might need a shot of epinephrine, like those people who are deadly allergic to bee stings. I would have to get a medical alert bracelet. I came to minutes later, and Hamilton was crouched over me, grim with concern. I took a tentative gulp of air. "Your cologne," I managed. "I'm not wearing cologne," he assured me. So it is Hamilton then. He's making me ill. I could not yet bear to break the news to him. I sent him away with a grocery list. Lip balm, more aspirins and juice, herbal immunity tonic, but to no avail, I knew. Light bulbs, fragrance-free laundry detergent. "I hate shopping alone," he complained. "You need to see a doctor." "Doctors are for sissies," I told him. He wanted to stay, but I insisted I needed the supplies. He left, hapless, taking with him his sneezy, throat-closing allergies. May 28th. I slipped between the purified sheets I'd scalded in bleach and slept dreamless until this morning. Did not hear Hamilton return with supplies. He was gone when I woke, had not stayed to sully my linens, only a note that said call him. I did, feeling revived, a little weak, but elated, as though all my cells had foisted off an invasion. My throat was clear, glands subsided. At the sound of Hamilton's voice, though, plaintive, petulant, there arose such a buzzing in my ears I nearly dropped the phone. My head reeled and I gripped the table for balance. setting the groceries he'd left for me. Vertigo, I shouted over the din. You're giving me vertigo or swimmer's ear or something. I told him about the leprosy. The geographic tongue confided all my suspicions. I could barely make out his strangled response. What's that? I prompted. You'll have to speak up. The buzzing. I said, you're sick, he yelled back. Didn't I know it? I had to unhook the phone then before my eardrums burst or I lost my equilibrium entirely. That's what we call it, unreliable narrator. My aunt loved this story. She's like, he made her sick. She's sick of him. She's sick of me. Go, girl. When I answer questions, I think one more would push it a little too long. Anybody have any? Or do you force me to read again? What do you think? Shall we just say goodnight? Should we go see if there's any good snacks? Are there any good snacks? Yeah.
How has making into Best American short stories changed your writing like that? Has that brought you a lot of attention?
Well, I had the short story collection was, I'd already had a contract for that, so it didn't change it in that way, although for a lot of people it does. Because a lot of times when you show up in there, agents start calling and stuff, and that's when things really start happening. And it kind of, the story had come out in a magazine, and then later it got, so it was sort of like right in the middle of that, and it was good. It was one of those things that's like, well, that's really good. That's a nice thing to happen before the collection comes out. So not a lot, but probably in some nice ways. Sort of lots of good things seem to happen at once. So, but it's weird, publication changes some of your writing or your writing life in a way that I don't think is necessarily so high, because you get really distracted with all the other outside stuff outside of writing. And it's real exciting. I had a really exciting and fun year, but it's a lot of distraction. That seems to be about writing, but it's really only about marketing. And so it can be very confusing. But overall good, because that's the thing that you hope happens, the thing that you want to happen is that what you write will be read. And so, it's not much to complain about, but it does change your, you don't feel like you're shouting down a well anymore. You feel like if I do something, it's going to get disseminated. And that's a little freaky, because I think even when you hope things will get published, you feel pretty secure that what you are working on is just yours. You're not thinking too much about outside of that
So
until.
you internalize that into your writing, what happens, thinking ever that will be heard, and then
Sometimes,
changes maybe what you write about, the stories you choose to send out, maybe.
I don't know how much it's changing that. I just think that I'm aware of something that I was less aware of before when I'm writing. And I don't know if it's good or bad. And I suspect that I need to think about that a lot less. Because I don't think any of that has a whole lot to do with when you're drafting and you're working. But it's nice to think. Because I'm prone to huge fantasizing anyway, and so it's not a whole lot different from when I would be writing before and having these delusions of grandeur. So maybe it's not so different. Did I answer your question? Anything else? Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, do you have any projects right now for your computer as far as writing?
Yeah, I'm half-ass working on a novel, and I'm working on a novel. I've got a bunch of unfinished short stories that I sort of scrounge around from one to the other. When I get tired of one thing, I pick back up another one. So I've always sort of got something on that I'm working on. The big thing, the tackle is a novel. So, but that seems to be the natural direction, because mostly the things I was working on seem to stretch longer and longer and have scope, but I'm a big short story fan. I'll always write short stories. That's the stuff.
Talk a little bit about the genesis of your stories. Ideas come and visit you, and you have to go seek them out, or what comes into place first of all
That's a great question.
when a story is being born?
A lot of times I usually start with a character. That's very much my way of doing it, which is not the only way, certainly. But think about characters a lot. I have a certain voice that I start to think about a lot. Maybe it's inspired by someone I know or have encountered, so I'm sure it's usually in some way relative to an experience. But I almost always start with one or two characters first and then see where they go, and then that's the story. There's a couple of things are really rooted in true events, but then the story kind of goes off on its own tangent. There's a story in the collection. Well, the title story is based very much on something that happened in Springfield, Missouri, with 3 women that went missing. And so that's a real concrete case of something real happened, and then I wrote about it, which is not always. It's usually a lot more oblique than that. It's usually a lot more just somebody said something, somebody told me something, and it just kind of cooked around in my head for a little bit, and then when I was ready to write about it, that's where I started writing about. I rarely go in with a plan, like a plot plan, or I have a general idea, and I'm usually proven wrong about halfway through about my notion of what that was going to be. But that's part of the fun of it too, because if I think I know the beginning, middle, and end, then I get kind of tired trying to get to it. I'm like, hurry up, y'all hurry up, die, so I can get out. Yeah, I think I did always want to. I know I wanted to be an actress first, or a movie star, or 5. But, and then sometime in high school, I remember thinking I thought maybe I want to be an anthropologist, because I found myself doing really weird stuff, like telling lies to remain in maybe kind of hinky situations, like to stay in a bar so I could talk to weird people, or, and I thought, well, there's either something really wrong with me, or maybe that my calling is to study the human condition. Okay, that's what but then I wasn't any good in science, and also I was a shampoo girl, which is not to negate everything I just told you, call it into question. But, so I think I kind of wanted to. I didn't really start writing until I was in college, not really, not like stories, really bad poetry. I still write some really bad poetry. But getting published was, and when I went to a fine arts program, I went to Bowling Green, part of that program was a really neat sort of immersing you in the business of, okay, so you're writing, and you're writing stuff, then you think you want to get it out there and get published, so what do you do now? And so a lot of people were just starting to send work out to various literary magazines and to various magazines, just trying to find an audience for it. So I started really doing that there. They had a great incentive that while you were a poor grad student, they would pay. Our one perk was that we had franking privileges, so you could send as much stuff out as you wanted, and the creative writing program would pay the postage, which was great because everybody got in the habit of just sending out work over and over again, really sending out work, and then starting to rack up rejection slips, which you really have to do, because you have to not get so upset by rejection slips that you won't send your stuff out again, because then you'll never get found. Like, the story that I think I told my class this, the story that ended up in Best American Short Stories, I had no fewer than 13 rejection slips from various places, most of which were a blank standard rejection, not a, thank you, kiss my foot, nothing. So if I just felt like, well, apparently this story sucks because several places don't like it, then it would never found the right place. So I got in the habit of sending my work out a lot, all the time, everywhere. And then by the time I was through with that program, the following year I enough stories to sort of get that, at least that minimal manuscript length for competitions, and usually that's around 150 pages. It's different for each competition. But once I had that, I started sending out an entire manuscripts to those things. And they're set up for new writers, emerging writers. They're meant to find emerging writers. And so one of the things I sent to was the Willa Cather Awards, which is part of Helicon 9 Press out of Kansas City. And it was selected for that. So that was my first thing. And the guy who judged that contest, Leonard Michaels, was a writer who really had done a lot of mentoring of young writers, had gotten a lot of people started, and he sort of took that manuscript and ushered it around to editors and found me an editor. So it's a Cinderella story. But that's how that happened. So luck, but also getting, I think a big chunk of it was luck, but also making your own luck by getting stuff out so broadly that the right person at the right time can see it. Is how I think that works. Or buying a press. Which I can't afford. Did I answer your question? Anything else? Yeah. Oh, it's a great question. Next to none. It depends. It really depends on who you're working with and what they do. Mostly none. Like Riverhead, who I think are wonderful people. They were very courteous and concerned. Like they were always like, well, we really love the cover. What do you think of the cover? You like the cover? And luckily I loved like the stuff they were doing, but I also had the feeling that, well, what if I didn't love it? You can trash it and start over. So it was sort of, they were solicitous and kind, but probably a lot of strategy stuff about the book was not so much up to me at all. But luckily, I think they did. I was real happy with the things they did. More importantly, and I think maybe this is part of what you're asking too, how much control over that material, like presentation of it, editing of it, etc. And that, I think, you hear horror stories all the time about someone taking your work and doing so much stuff to it that you don't recognize it anymore as yours and losing control of it. And that's certainly a danger. Again, I just think I was really lucky to work with people who seemed very concerned with keeping things as I wanted them to be. She was good in the final kind of go-round of going through individual stories. She was really good about tagging things and asking a question, and just saying, just sort of inviting me to think about something that maybe was a little, not all it could be or something. So she was very light touch about that, my editor. But again, that stuff depends on the editor. But I think you can find, I think it's worth finding the one who is willing to help represent you and your work in the best possible way. That's worth it. That's worth more than just publishing at any cost, no matter what. So, you get me.
Do you find that there are particular themes that have general appeal to readers? Are there particular areas or subjects that you...
People like dirty stories. No, I think that when you find your audience, that there's an audience for, there's so many different audiences. And you see what the things that have the most appeal are probably the things that make it onto you'll see it in the supermarket aisle. That's how broadly disseminated that work is. You won't find me on the grocery aisle, but you'll find Stephen King or D.N.R. Coons or Danielle Steele, and probably because what they're writing is so broadly appealing, tackling, and most things are that you tackle in books have everyone is interested in to some extent. We're interested in the dark side of human nature, and we're interested in love. We're interested in all the confusion that goes on between two people. So I think in that way, those are the kinds of things I write about. Certainly, I think that audiences are more, my audience is probably more limited. Certainly, they're more limited. And that audiences are something that sort of develop with time too. So I don't know, anything that interests human beings, anything that's about the human condition is probably to some extent appealing to everybody. And then writers have their own individual subsets of audiences that really get what you have to say, that really are interested in the same kinds of things you're interested in. I guess. That answers. Hey, was there someone in the back?
What would you say is what are some of the differences between Ohio and
No, just kidding. Well, I grew up in North Carolina, and I spent like 3 years in Ohio, and then several years later, I spent another year in Ohio. So, can I be said to know Ohio as well as North Carolina? No. I will say that people aren't as friendly, but that's true in North Carolina now too. Because there's all the small towns are now big towns. All the small towns are sleeper communities for Research Triangle Park. So it's rapidly changing. And another thing that I'm finding is, and it's interesting because at the same time there's a lot of interest in regionalism in writing, things that have a sense of place and time. And at the same time, in the big world, our places are growing to look a whole lot like each other and sound and seem a whole lot alike. I could go down a strip in Bowling Green that would look just like a strip of Capitol Boulevard in Raleigh, my hometown, and they are, 900 miles apart, and yet if I forgot myself for a minute, I wouldn't know which town I was in. So it's interesting, they're different, and I'm real interested in their differences, but I'm also interested in the way that things are getting to be so much more the same everywhere you go, even when you leave the continent, how much the same they can be. Sort of answered, sort of answered, but maybe. Was there, I've seen a couple, yes, change your mind. If there's anything else, we'll adjourn. Thank you so much.